UK inflation comes out later this month and is likely to show a rise to 4%. That's well above the Bank of England's 2% inflation target, of course, and it would be the highest number for 2 years. But that's not the real bad news. If we take a 5-year view, average UK inflation now stands even higher and has been on a rising trend ever since the end of COVID. And yet, the Bank of England have been cutting interest rates. Any reasonable observer would conclude that the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee is not following its own target. Indeed, inflation expectations, according to their own influential decision-maker panel, well, they've been stuck at above 3.5% for over a year. They were once reliably close to the 2% target. Now, the decision by the last incoming Labour government in 1997 to make the Bank of England independent, that was one of their very best macro decisions. The stock market jumped and gilt yields fell immediately the news came out, and by anchoring inflation expectations at the 2% target, the result has been greater financial stability and a reduction in the sacrifice ratio. Now, that's the name we economists give to the estimated cost of getting inflation down, that cost in terms of higher unemployment and lost output. Now, the best guess is that sacrifice ratio fell almost to zero as confidence in the Bank of England rose in the early years of this century. My guess is that the Bank of England's persistent failure in recent years to hit their own target has raised that sacrifice ratio. And it means that a recession, albeit a mild one, might well be required if the Bank of England are to get serious about getting inflation sustainably back to target. Let me explain. If we go back to the bad old days of the 70s and 80s, the sacrifice ratio was reckoned to be around 1.3% for the UK. To get inflation down by 1%, that means we'd have to lose 1.3% of GDP for a year. Now, I suspect that today's sacrifice ratio is well below that number, probably around 1/2. Bank of England credibility may have declined, but it hasn't gone completely, and union power, at least in the private sector, is much weaker than it was back in the 70s and 80s. So, with actual and expected inflation now running at 3.5% to 4%, a loss of GDP of a little less than 1 percentage point for a year would be required to get inflation back on track. Now, given how low trend growth rate in the UK has become, a mild recession would be a distinct possibility, a probability in that scenario. In terms of practical steps, the Bank of England would have to raise interest rates, not aggressively, but gradually, a quarter point a quarter perhaps. The last rate cut in August, well, that was by the most slender majority, 5-4 and 4 against, arguing for no change. The last meeting saw 7 for no change, but merely indicating that a rate hike was a serious possibility, and nobody's arguing that significantly on the MPC at present. That would start the process of reducing inflation. It would raise 2- and 5-year swap rates, which determine mortgage rates. It would strengthen sterling and generally tighten financial conditions. A steady rise in base rates to perhaps 5% might do the trick. Could be more, could be less. We'll have to see. Well, mind you, having said all of that, I just don't think the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee are about to follow this course anytime soon. The government certainly wouldn't support it. Both the Chancellor and the Prime Minister know that they may be out of a job after the local elections next May. Any short-term pain reducing inflation, well, it certainly wouldn't help them. Now, don't forget, although the government has given the Bank of England operational independence, they still appoint the governor and the 4 independent members. So I expect the Bank of England will keep rates at 4% for the foreseeable future and just hope for the best. They may get lucky, but I doubt it. Goodbye.